Welcome to Nodevember Day 7, where the word of today is precious. So I decided to make this particular piece based on what I consider the most precious thing is time. And we made this on a Friday in the Being an Artist 1-hour live art show, together with a number of others where we just spent an hour together building a precious piece. So this is a 1-hour time lapse, done at about 800%. So to start, I set up my system and create a spiral shape, and then I extrude it out and set the curve to mesh using a line. I wasn't sure how to make the spiral exponential. It's just a linear outwards shape, so I tested to see if my own spiral would do a similar shape, but it's also stuck to similar principles. So I needed to think about, so maybe I'll just use my spiral and then build it out with my own drivers and gizmos already built in. So I have a little bit of control for animation. So then I started thinking about how I can make it more of an exponential shape and push it out. So I added a little bit of the distance and extrusion into itself, and then I started to get more of an exponential spiral width going in for the look. So I thought, all right, nice. So in general, this was inspired based on a timeline that spirals outwards. I wanted it to compress and build to show that it is like a clock, and that the more spirals you get, the less perception of how long time or how fast time is. And then I was going to see if I could build some textures or railing. So then I'm using a sense of edge detection or face detection to get the indices of the outer edges to see if I could bring them out and create a new curve to extract the shapes and extrude every modulo or so. So I'm using the visibility attributes and bring out the outer edge and inner edge without the actual inner faces. So with that I could add an actual border with another curve to mesh. Then from there I start thinking about numbers. I have no idea how to deform numbers and around this shape. I thought maybe I'll give it a go. Maybe I could use the repeat zone to increment the numbers and split them out as instances. And I think about it, and I could increment the numbers using the repeat zone, but I could not find a way to deform. So it left me thinking, what now? So after having tried a number of different assets and array systems and curve deformation systems that Arundel had, I couldn't quite figure out a way to do it. So I thought, okay, it looks pretty janky. It's not really working how I wanted it to be. So I thought maybe I will scrap this idea and use a different type of system. So I still gave it a try. The instances were deforming too much, tapering a lot. So I thought, I don't have enough time to figure this out because I have just 1 hour to do this. So I decided to eventually delete it, and I thought, okay, let's just use the modulo selection on the same extrusions that I had before, every second or so point, and extrude them out so that I have a second set of clock faces, because I don't have a lot of time to figure that out. So now I have this new, I guess you could say, clock face attached to it, and I tune it to taste as it spirals out. It looks really cool, not gonna lie. So then I get a slightly different thickness, make the inner edges a bit thicker, and then I think, okay, I guess I gotta start thinking about the actual animation, I suppose, and the materials. So I have inherited the materials into the system, but it looks like I will need to define that with one material and some shaders. So I use the color capture attribute on each of the 3 different pieces, and I use an RGB mask into the vertex colors, and I call that into the material. So you can use the attribute inside the material and use the geometry colors or whatever color of the generated geometry as a mask to define the different colors and materials of different things. So I decided to make the outside kind of a golden metal and the inside a white and black clock face kind of look. I defined the resolution and changed the shape of it so that I make sure that the resolution stays relatively constant and based on the length. And then I start thinking, oh, great, that's basically what I need. So now let's focus on the inner. So I make a new mesh or a new object within the same tree, and I start using a cylinder, and I use the new index mask created by erasers that we're including Bforartists with free in 5.0 coming soon, to select just one of the faces to extrude outwards. And then I use the scale elements of that last face and boolean and a copy of that cylinder inside of itself. So I have my first clock, and then I think of the motion. So I'm using a frame with wasn't sure how I was going to do it, so I decided to divide the time, use a snapping by increments based on a certain amount of frames at the frame range that I need, so that I have, I guess you could say, a time. So I'm using the map range to kind of define how long it should spin around, or how often, and how many seconds, and how, so what are the distances, to kind of time that to the frames. And then I start adding in the same color masking into that particular shape, the same black as the actual handles. And that should work. So now I'm thinking, okay, so now I got the clock shape, I got the general look, now I just need to make the other handle. So I make a little cylinder into the center, just so that it spins around that as a central pivot point. Still spinning kind of fast, so then I start creating the animation of time compressing into itself to the point that you cannot perceive how long you have lived, and the sense of different epochs. And I thought, maybe setting the same snapping into that actual spiral shape would look kind of cool. So I use a modifier, then reverse it at the end as it restarts, as life goes in cycles. And then I add another clock with a step, a lot, I guess you could say, a faster step for a different frame range, work on the lighting, and the piece is practically done. The final look included some color balancing, a little bit of bloom, slowing down the main clock that's running at 1 or 2 steps with a bit of motion blur, changing the lighting a little bit, adding in some ray tracing, tuning the background color, and just adjusting the animation here and there. And that's it. So this was day 7. What I consider most precious is time. And now we're going onwards onto day 8. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.